And now we go to the final speech of today by Mr. Waterman. And it's a sustainable future for Greater Jakarta by stopping groundwater extraction and land subsidence with measures including aquapuncture and building with nature. The floor is yours.
It's a pleasure to be in your midst and to discuss this subject. You must know that Greater Jakarta encompasses Bekasi, Tangerang, Bogor, Depok, and passing 30 million inhabitants, situated in a low-lying, vulnerable delta. Through Jakarta are flowing 11 rivers and 2 banjir canals. These rivers and canals are heavily polluted and often clogged with waste. The waterfronts of these rivers and canals, which are very important for servicing, are often blocked because of illegal building sites on these waterfronts and even in the rivers and canals itself. The dikes, pumping stations and sluices are in bad condition. Far too much groundwater is extracted and wastewater purification is inadequate, as is the collection of treatment of solid wastes. Land subsidence is still increasing at a fast rate, 17 centimeters per year in northern part of Jakarta, especially there. These problems are aggravated by climate change, resulting in sea level rise, a higher frequency and intensity of storm surges, and in the existing hinterland, a higher frequency and intensity of rainfall intermittently with periods of drought. Solutions regarding these serious problems can be achieved. First of all, groundwater extraction must be replaced by freshwater supply from upriver through, for instance, the use of the Jalituhur River basin upstream, through piping and partly by desalination of seawater. Application of an adequate sewer system and wastewater purification is necessary, as well as the collection and treatment of solid waste. Otherwise, Jakarta is lost. Introducing aquapuncture, which I will explain later, is advised for the optimal use, adaptation and management of the waterways and their waterfronts, for flood prevention, water storage, water level regulation, navigability, economy, and employment. But also for livability. All the waterfronts with adequate width along the rivers and canals. Here you see these 11+2 rivers and canals flowing into the bay, Laut Jakarta, the Laut Java or the Teluk Jakarta, the Bay of Jakarta. All these waterfronts with an adequate width along the rivers and canals must be cleared systematically, kilometer after kilometer, by a large special workforce, number 1, which can be 10,000 workmen and women with equipment during a period of many years, maybe 25 years, and all the waterways must be dredged and kept clean, while all the bridges must be adapted and this process has already been started with the main river, the Ciliwung River. A second special large workforce, number 2, consisting maybe of another 10,000 people, must be parallel installed for the same period of many years for social resettlement, because it includes replacement of population. Social resettlement which is necessary for the people living directly on to be cleared waterfronts. This social resettlement must be achieved through outplacement by introduction of high-rise apartments in the vicinity and by outplacement on new land reclamation in the form of islands and peninsulas in the Bay of Jakarta. This land reclamation can be achieved, and we already started it, by application of the method of building with nature, which I will explain later. This vast, extended operation is coupled by an integral, multifunctional coast and delta policy addressing many functions in all their intricate relationships. In all cases, the whole operation must be executed, even taking into account the decision and execution of the movement of the capital, Nusantara, to southeast Kalimantan. Because of, if you create, which has been the decision of the president, a new capital in East Kalimantan, you can replace 1 million people there, but the total number of inhabitants of Greater Jakarta is 30 million. So you must do both, not forgetting Jakarta itself. Now, what means building with nature and aquapuncture? Building with nature, I am the originator of building with nature in the Netherlands. We have executed 12 projects along the Dutch coast between Hoek of Holland and Den Helder. We created 3,500 new hectares, dunes and beaches in front of the original coast, which means building with nature using more than before the inorganic material sand from fine to coarse, clay and gravel, and organic materials, flora and fauna, also present in nature, and the forces, influences, and interactions to which they are exposed in nature. This in order to create new dunes and beaches along these peninsulas and new islands, or mangrove coasts. These forces and influence and interactions are the actions of tides, ebb and flood, sea currents other than tidal currents, waves, gravity, wind, river outflow, both as a force, but also as the provider of sediments, rain, solar radiation, interaction dunes, vegetation or mangroves, and the soil, and the interaction marine organisms and soil in order to stabilize dunes and beaches and mangrove coasts, including the wet foreshore. The method strives for a flexible, dynamic equilibrium coast in which accretion and erosion are more or less balancing each other with a small maintenance factor in the form of periodic beach nourishment of special measures to stimulate mangrove restoration, and with a minimum of solid seawall elements. And we need this method of building with nature to create new islands in the Bay of Jakarta to facilitate living and working of people, which has to be in an accepted way to be replaced. Now I come to acupuncture and aquapuncture. You all know acupuncture as a Chinese method using needles to revitalize the nervous system in the human body. Aquapuncture is to revitalize the water system. And that means the optimal use, adaptation, and management of inland waterways, rivers, canals, lakes, and their waterfronts for safety against flooding, water storage, water level regulation, water quality, navigability, economy, employment, and feasibility, and livability, including nature, landscape, environment, specifically in this case, the urban environment. And then we need a third, integrated coast and delta policy via building with nature and aquapuncture, which is devoted to the sustainable, multifunctional development of vulnerable, densely populated coast and delta areas. Many functions have to be considered in all their intricate relationships in relation to the bordering sea on the one hand, and in relation to the existing hinterland on the other. Here you see the map concerning sea level rise, higher frequency, intensity of storm surges and rainfall, land subsidence up to 10 to 20 centimeters per year. So there is the necessity of an adequate sewer and drainage system. At the moment there's insufficient pumping capacity, too much drinking water extraction from groundwater, contamination of surface water, illegal encroachment into rivers and drains, necessity of the collection and treatment of waste, outdated infrastructure along rivers and canals, pipelines, cables, bridges, roads, flood retaining walls, and ring dikes. Shore protection is absolute necessary, and we have the siltation of rivers and canals. For the sustainable future of Greater Jakarta, there is the necessity of drastically reducing land subsidence by stopping groundwater extraction and introducing fresh water supply through upstream Jali to Hur Basin and partly by desalination of seawater, application of an adequate sewer system, wastewater purification, as well as collection and treatment of solid waste. All the waterfronts with an adequate width along the rivers and canals must be cleared by systematically by a large special workforce, number one, with equipment during a long period, and all the waterways must be dredged and kept clean, while all the bridges must be adapted. And the second special large workforce, number two, must be parallel installed for the same long period for social resettlement necessary for the people living directly on the to-be-cleared waterfronts. Here you see the present situation. Clear I cannot express. When you look at the rivers and canals, this is the picture. And you see even kampongs are situated in the rivers. It's an impossible situation. I have held the same lecture for the Director General Water of the Kementerian Pekerjaan Umum, the Public Works Department, and he already installed a workforce clearing the first 6 kilometers of the main river Ciliwung. But that's only the beginning. Otherwise, Jakarta will be lost. Here you see the flooding at 600 places along Jakarta and the surrounding area. This is the main square This is situation. This vast extended operation is coupled with an integral multifunctional coast and delta policy addressing many functions in all their intricate relationships. To achieve all this, aquapuncture and building with nature are to be introduced. Aquapuncture for the optimal use, adaptation and management, I explained it already, and building with nature, which I already also explained. Here you see acupuncture versus aquapuncture. 2 minutes left. And here is the model which I'm now using worldwide concerning aquapuncture. The ring symbolizes the river or canal or lake in any country. We have always to deal with urban and rural characteristics. That is the arch above, which I can replace. I have many models all over Europe and otherwise. Here you see Jakarta, Soekarno-Hatta Airport, the presidential palace, the large mosque, the national monument. Rivers flows in the end into the sea or bay. Here you see Tanjung Priok, the large harbor of Jakarta, and Sunda Kelapa. And then we come to aquapuncture. Those are all the physical adaptations and interventions which are necessary to achieve your goal. And this is worldwide applicable. So the bridges above the canals, the depths of the canal, river or canal widening, aqueducts, sluices. You always have to deal with drainage and irrigation, water quality. We must take a look at the time. The pumping stations and the weirs for water level regulation, the importance of the view, the panorama from the river or canal to the waterfronts, the bank protection, the care for safety, including nautical safety, waiting stations, quay wall construction, marinas or how do you call? Ja, de aanlegplaatsen voor binnenvaart. Ja, around the quay, the whole construction. And we have to care for climate change. That is the central people, planet, persons. And private. And then we have the potential user groups, the people and the companies along the waterfront with the facilities, motorboating, water sport, river canal cruises, bulk or container transport, special events, concert on water, sail, floating flower shows, and so on. And we have the flora and fauna in the riverbed, the water column, and along the shores of the banks of the river. Those are the physical potential adaptations. Finally, to achieve all this, and we can use the method explained by you, we have to deal with stakeholder analysis and stakeholder participation, public, private, participation. We always have to deal with the various levels of governments. We have to deal with the trias politica, the executive, the legislative, and the judicial part. We have to introduce social cost benefit analysis, knowledge enhancement, apps and internet.
It's about time to round up.
Yes, which I do now.
Okay, great.
We have coupled with a social cost benefits measurement model, and here followed but explanation of building with nature. And here we have to take into account all the functions when we decide land reclamation in the sea. Stop.
Thank you very much. Great applause. You basically summarized the whole session in your talk, which is very good, impressive. Thank you. And I know you have a long experience in working in this area. I'm going to allow for one very quick question with a quick answer, if there is one. Yeah.
I hate to ask this, but the general impression is that the government has given up and is moving to another location. Do they really have the willpower to save Jakarta, or are they abandoning the big problems?
Well, they will proceed with the new capital, but as I explained, it's only 1 million people involved by cutting a part of rainforest, which will go on. But the population is so massive in Jakarta, it's absolutely not sufficient. And you know, when I gave this lecture at the Director General Water of Jakarta, he said, "When are you leaving?" I said, "Tomorrow." Then I order my secretary room and invite 50 of my top ambtenaren, civil servants, and you give you 3 hours to give your lecture, and we shall ask parallel translation in Bahasa Indonesia. And he started this project, but as I explained, it is a very extensive, very expensive, but the only way to keep Jakarta, Jakarta. The only way, otherwise it's lost.
Thank you. One more applause. Yes. Okay, and this concludes our session for today and the whole program for today. Thank you very much for attending, for being active in asking questions and engaging in discussions.